Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, 888-589-8840. If you want to join the program, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. We have banned the term assault weapon or military-style weapon from the Focal Point program. You will not hear these words again unless I goof. The word you will hear from now on is sporting rifle, because that's what President Obama wants to ban. He wants to ban the sporting rifle, the American sporting rifle in America. And, I mentioned before the bottom of the hour, before the end of that last break, that magazine limits actually endanger victims instead of saving them. Now, the Supreme Court, by the way, this is interesting because President Obama says, I want Congress to limit magazines to 10 rounds. In New York, it's 7. You can have a 10-round magazine, but you can only have 7 bullets in there. Gerald Nadler say, hey, nobody needs more than 2 to 4 bullets to shoot a deer. Gerald Nadler, this is not about shooting deer. This is about protecting you and your children from violent men. That's what this is about. And sometimes you need well more than 2 to 4 rounds. That woman that shot the intruder in her crawl space, she had 6 bullets. She emptied the revolver. 5 of them found their target, and the guy still wasn't dead. So she needed more than 4 rounds to neutralize the guy, and even that didn't kill him. He was still able to crawl down the stairs and drive off and run his car into a tree. This is a piece by Jacob Sullum on Town Hall. The court has said that the Second Amendment guarantees the right to own weapons, quote, in common use for lawful purposes, which clearly include guns capable of firing more than 10 rounds without reloading. The Glock 17, one of the most popular handguns in America, comes with a 17-round magazine. One of the most popular rifles, sporting rifles, the AR-15, comes with a 30-round magazine. Measured by what people actually buy and use, magazines that hold more than 10 rounds are hardly outliers. In fact, there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of these magazines already in circulation, which is one reason new limits cannot be expected to have an impact on people who are determined to commit mass murder. I mean, you could stop the manufacture of any more magazines that had a capacity for more than 2. You could stop that today, and it would make absolutely no difference because there are hundreds of millions of these magazines that are out there, that are in circulation, that are in use. They cannot all be recalled. So a guy's determined to commit mass murder and he wants a 30-round magazine to do it, he's going to be able to find a way to get his hands on one. So this is just useless bloviating. It's just fog in the air. It's just to create the impression that he's getting serious about gun violence when this regulation will mean nothing. Another reason Jacob Sullum goes on to say is that changing magazines takes 1 to 3 seconds, which will rarely make a difference in assaults on unarmed people. The gunman in Connecticut, for example, reportedly fired about 150 rounds. That's the one at the school. So he must have switched his 30-round magazines at least 4 times. He stopped only because police were closing in, which prompted him to kill himself. So in other words, the only thing that was going to stop him wasn't anything other than the fact that the good guys with guns were coming. And this is what Wayne LaPierre said. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And Sullum goes on, self-defense experts such as firearms instructor Masad Ayub point out there are various scenarios, including riots, home invasions, and public attacks by multiple aggressors in which a so-called large-capacity magazine can make a crucial difference, especially when you recognize that people firing weapons under pressure do not always hit their targets and that assailants are not always stopped by a single round. I read a study one time. They've done a study of FBI agents involved in shootouts. These are highly trained law enforcement officials. They miss in a firefight, they miss their target 80% of the time. In other words, the more chaos you have, the more movement you have, the more stress you have, the more pressure you have, the more likely you are to miss your target, even if you are a trained marksman. And that's why these high-capacity magazines might just be the thing that saves your life and the lives of your families. Now, and he says, look, if imposing this 10-round limit if they're saying, if President Obama is saying, look, you don't need more than 10 rounds for self-defense, then why in the world don't we limit the Secret Service agents to 10 rounds? And if they say, well, we need the extra rounds to provide more protection against armed assailants, then why are you keeping the American people from enjoying the protection that you yourself have? Now, the interesting thing is President Obama, let's grab audio clip 3, Jeff, if we can. President Obama trotted out a whole batch of kids today to try to gin up this symphony. If you don't like what I'm saying, it's because you hate kids. I mean, that's the impression he's trying to create. Here's what he had to say. Surrounded by all these kids, wrote him these very touching letters. We got to stop violence in our schools. I'm absolutely down with that. And it's interesting, by the way, that President Obama, one of his executive orders, I haven't heard very many people talk about this. What did I do with my list? One of his executive orders has to do with providing for armed guards in schools. What did I do with that list? It's on the list. Here it is. Number 18, provide incentives for schools to hire school resource officers. What's a school resource officer? That's a guy with a gun. So President Obama is admitting here that the NRA is exactly right. You want increased security in schools. Get people with guns on campus that know how to use them. So here's President Obama talking just shamelessly using these kids as a prop for his agenda.
These are our kids. This is what they're thinking about. And so what we should be thinking about is our responsibility to care for them and shield them from harm and give them the tools they need to grow up and do everything that they're capable of doing, not just to pursue their own dreams, but to help build this country. This is our first task as a society, keeping our children safe. This is how we will be judged, and their voices should compel us to change.
So he says this is how we will be judged. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a second. You know, basically saying the measure of any society is what it does, how it takes care of its children. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But President Obama is just down on anybody, but he's apparently okay with school resource officers, law enforcement officials that carry badges and carry guns. He's okay with them being on campus. He's surrounded by guns everywhere he goes. He's going to have a lifetime Secret Service detail. So the rest of his life, he's going to have people with guns around him to protect his safety and the safety of his family. He's even got an incentive plan in there in his executive order to encourage schools to hire resource officers, men with guns. Why? Because it works. Now, here's what Obama said at the Master Lock plant in Milwaukee. This is video clip 1, Rob, if we can. And he's at this Master Lock, and he's kind of joking around about when he was in school, and he had locks on his locker, and he'd forget the combination. They'd have to come and saw him off. But he's kind of glad that they've got these super locks now because he just might need that for his own girls when they get to high school. And then he added this.
For now, I'm just counting on the fact that when they go to school, there are men with guns with them. So
he likes it. He likes the fact that his girls, when they go to school, they've got men with guns with them. Why? Because it makes them safe. He knows that. He's admitting it. So it's absolute total hypocrisy for him to try to disarm the American people when he's got people armed to the teeth escorting his own daughters to school. Now, here is the NRA ad. This is clip number 3, Rob. NRA has come out with a very effective ad this morning, and Jay Carney called this a cowardly and repugnant ad because it uses kids as props for a political agenda. Now, I want you to understand that. President Obama just came out of a press conference where he had oodles of kids as props for his political agenda. But when supporters of the Second Amendment use kids as props for their political agenda, that is repugnant and cowardly. And let's listen to the NRA ad.
Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, but he's just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security. Protection for their kids and gun-free zones for ours.
That's the NRA ad, a pretty effective ad if you ask me. So President Obama's spokesman outraged at that. So apparently it's kids for me, but not for thee. I can use kids as props all I want. I can have dozens of kids up here as props. You can't use kids anywhere when you're talking about protecting the safety of our children. Now, let's grab clip number 2. Now, this is interesting because we talked about the fact that a sporting rifle was used in the attack at Sandy Hook. Here's NBC. This was shortly after the event happened, and I've never heard them refute this. So I'm assuming that a sporting rifle was used with a 30-round magazine. I'm assuming that that's the case because that's what I seem to be reading today. But here's NBC. This is Pete Williams. This is the top of the tier in the mainstream media talking about what they believe was the actual case at Sandy Hook. Let's listen.
Pete Williams, our Chief Justice correspondent, has got some new information as well. Pete, good morning.
Matt, good morning to you. This continues to be a very complex investigation, and there's a lot of contradictory information out there, but there is some new information this morning from a couple of federal officials and state officials. They say now that there were actually 4 handguns recovered inside the school, not just 2, as we were initially told. 4 handguns, and apparently only handguns, that were taken into the school. We knew that Adam Lanza, the man said to be the gunman here, also had a assault-style, AR-15 style rifle that he had taken to the school that was in the car he drove there, his mother's car. But we've been told by several officials that he left that in the car. We're also told that on the 11th of December, on Tuesday of this week, Adam Lanza went to a sporting goods store in Danbury, Connecticut, and tried to buy another rifle, but was denied the ability to buy the rifle for a couple of reasons. One is that Connecticut is among the states with stricter gun regulations, and there's a waiting period, so he was denied the rifle for that.
So Connecticut, in fact, has some of the stiffest gun laws in the country, and Adam Lanza broke 41 gun laws on that day. Another law wasn't going to make any difference. Focal Point, AFR Talk.